We listen to the Dhamma every day. We need to put it into practice. If we are not practicing, we will not get anything much. The Dhamma cannot be learned by reading, listening, or thinking, but by watching the real thing and watching the truth. The real thing is that this body and mind is real. The truth is the three characteristics, hilakkhana, we shall watch in order to see. Only listening to the Dhamma, no matter how much, is just so and so. Besides listening, we need to put it into practice. The practice of the Dhamma starts from being mindful. When standing up, walking, sitting, lying down, eating, drinking, doing, and talking, we shall be mindful. When the mind thinks and then fabricate positivity or negativity, thinks good or thinks bad, we shall be mindful. Keep on knowing our own mind. When standing up, walking, sitting, lying down, eating, drinking, doing, and talking, the body is the one who plays the roles. Who commands the body to play those roles? The mind is the one who commands. When thinking, the mind is the one who thinks. Therefore, the thing that hides behind the physical, verbal, and mental behaviors is the mind. The mind is the thinker. It thinks and then takes action by commanding to talk, commanding the body to work, this thing and that thing. For example, to curse him, to hit him, to do the angry face, to do the smiley face, etc. The mind is the chief. Then try to practice learning it. Learning from the mind. Speaking about the mind, it sounds understandable, but actually it is hard to find. We do not know what the mind is, where it is, what we use to watch it, and how we watch it. We are not used to knowing this thing, but we do know that there is the mind. The word mind has been said for a long time. The words chitta and mana are the same one and are of the same nature. I met Luangpu Dun for the first time. Prior to meeting him, I had read the Tipitaka for many times, but reading only the discipline and discourses, due to not understanding the higher doctrine. Although reading a lot, I did not know how to do the mental development bhavana. One day I found the Dhamma book, published by Sampang Tawong Temple. It had a little space left, so they put in the Dhamma of Luangpu Dun, saying that the mind sending outwards is samudaya, the cause of suffering. The result of the mind sending outwards is dukkha, the suffering. The mind clearly seeing the mind is magga, the path to the cessation of suffering. The result of the mind clearly seeing the mind is nirodha, the cessation of suffering. The normal of mind is to send outwards. However, sending outward without mindfulness and then shaking is samudaya. The mind sending outwards with mindfulness is the cultivation of magga, which results in nirodha, the cessation of suffering and the liberation from suffering. The last verse said that all Ariya Pugala, the noble persons, have their minds not bent outwards, have their minds not shaking, and have the complete mindfulness as the state of mind. Luangpu Dun said the end of the Ariya Saka, the noble truth. By reading here, it sprang to mind that it was true. If the mind was not suffering, then who was suffering? We are busy solving the suffering elsewhere. It cannot be solved. The people in the world keep suffering in these matters or suffering in those matters. There are various sufferings. The suffering from the body, ages, pain, and death, and the mental suffering, the separation from the things we love or the persons we love, and the dissatisfaction. These cause the suffering to arise in the mind. There are many details. For example, the unemployed are suffering, the heartbroken are suffering, and the epidemic that prevents us from doing what we like is suffering. In each day we explore ourselves from waking up. How many times does suffering arise in one day? Try observing ourselves for only one day, from waking up to sleep. How many times does suffering arise? Countless suffering. Keep knowing and watching it and being aware of it. Is there suffering in the body or suffering in the mind? The body suffering cannot be escaped. For the mind, although everything is fine, the mind will get into the suffering matters sometimes. The mind realizes that if the mind is not suffering, then who will be suffering? The body is the object. If the mind does not get involved, it will not be suffering when the body is getting old, being painful or dead. The body never complains. Do you feel that the body never complains? When the body is hungry, the body does not complain. When the body is exhausted, weary and weak, the body does not complain. When being soaked with sweat, hot and tortured, the body never complains. When being hungry, the body never complains. When being too full, the body never complains. When being stool and urinary ache, the body does not complain. The body has the suffering in itself, but it does not complain. For the mind, sometimes when knowing something, it will be suffering with that thing and get involved with that thing. When the body is sick, the mind will get sick too. It gets involved in every matter. Although there is no physical problem, the mind will be suffering somehow. In the morning, when listening to the news and watching the news about the number of disease-infected persons, the mind will be suffering and worry that when this disease will disappear so that we can live our life as the same. The mind is the suffering one. It wants the disease to end, while the body never complains about the COVID. The mind is the interfering one. Therefore, if we can really learn into the mind, we can be free from suffering. Learning the mind by reading textbooks does not make us understand. Listening to the sermon does not make us understand. Thinking that the mind is like this or the mind is like that does not make us understand. We must learn by seeing the real condition of what the mind is. Must see. Therefore, there is no other way but seeing. The word see it correctly or see it clearly is the same as the word vipassana. Vi means clearly and passana means see, which means clearly seeing the truth of the body and mind. When we clearly see this body, we will know that it has no essence. It is just the suffering one, but not the lamenting one. The mind is the interfering one, which causes the problems all the time. Therefore, if we could successfully train our mind well, we will not be suffering. The Buddha taught that the well-trained mind brings happiness. Therefore, our duty is to train the mind. The first step of mind training is to see what the mind is like. Before training it, we must get to know it first. To train soldiers, there must be soldiers to be trained. We must recruit the persons to be the soldiers first. If we want to train the soldiers, but there are no soldiers, who will be trained? We're going to train the mind, so we must have the mind to be trained. Where is the mind? I used to have this question. I listened to the Dhamma from Luangpu Pramote for the first time on the 6th of February 1982. He taught that you have already read a lot of books. From now on, read your own mind. He taught me to read my own mind. The word read is that we just know and see how the mind is and what role the mind plays, like the play in the soap opera. It is like we are reading a novel. The mind shows the novel for us to see. We will see that it shows the soap opera for us to see. Sometimes a love scene, sometimes an angry scene, sometimes happy scenes, or sometimes suffering scenes. Sometimes it is greedy, sometimes it is angry, and sometimes it is eluded. Sometimes it's calm, sometimes it is distracted. It shows the soap opera for us to watch. If we are going to see the mind, Luangpu Dun taught that you have already read a lot of books. From now on, read your own mind. I started to doubt after leaving him. While being with him, I had no doubt due to my mind being rapture. After leaving him and getting into the train, I started to doubt. At the point he taught me to watch the mind and to read the mind, that what is the mind? Where is the mind? What do we use to watch it? How to watch it? I did not know anything. I used to ordain at Pamojjo-25 temple when I had not yet graduated. In the morning, there was the morning chanting. They did the chanting with the translation. The chanting with translation is good and better than the plain chanting. By chanting with translation, we have the chance to gain wisdom. By plain chanting, we will have the samadhi, but not the wisdom. Since we do not know the meaning of Pali language, in the morning chanting, it taught about the body, rupa, the feeling, vedana, the perception, sanya, and the mind, mental formation, sankharas, and the consciousness, vijnana. It taught that rupa padana kanda means can, which is the aggregate, the one being attached to is the body. Vedana padana kanda, sanya padana kanda, sankhara padana kanda, vijnana padana kanda means the aggregate, which are the ones being attached to, are the body, the feeling, the perception, the mind formation, and the consciousness. In the next sentence, the Buddha taught that the body is impermanent, anicca. The feeling is impermanent. The perception is impermanent. The mind formation is impermanent. And the consciousness is impermanent. And jumped to that the body is non-self, anatta. And the feeling, the perception, the mind formation, and the consciousness are non-self. When thinking about the chanting, I had thought that the mind has to be within these five aggregates. The mind will not be elsewhere. Then I did the samadhi and made the mind stable. The stable mind could be made since I was young. Instead of being panicked that Luangpu Dun told me to watch the mind, but having no idea how to watch it, when seeing the mind became worried, I sat down, breathing in good and breathing out do. When the mind was calm, I considered that the mind had to be within these five aggregates. Was it in the body? I had known that the mind had to be within this body, not beyond this body. But not knowing where it was located in the body, I looked into it from hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, ligament to bones. I looked into it up and down, from the tip of hairs to the soles, and from the soles to the tip of hairs. Kept on looking up and down. When the mindfulness and samadhi was aware of one part of the body, that part became empty and lost. It was empty. I did not see the mind rising. I had known that the mind was in the body, but not in any part of the body. This was its strangeness. The mind was not beyond this body, not on the trees, not in the fields, not in the mountains. The mind was in the body, but not in any part of the body. I looked into it up and down, from the tip of hairs to the soles, and from the soles to the tip of the hairs, thoroughly. There was no mind. Now what? Where was the mind? Was the mind in the feeling? The advantage of the chanting with translation was to know about the body and the feeling. The feeling was happiness, suffering, and indifference. I had done the samadhi to cause the mind to be happy, and then looked into it. When mindfulness and samadhi had concentrated on the happiness disappeared. There was no mind rising. For the suffering, I had not known how to set the mind to be suffering. Therefore, I sat still, not moving, but wobbling due to sitting on the train. Taking a look for a while, I saw this body getting suffering. Sitting still and not moving was suffering. Then I looked into it with the mindfulness and the samadhi of a stable mind. I looked into the suffering, but did not see the mind in the suffering feeling. The indifferent feeling was the same. The mind is not in the feeling. Then I kept on looking. Was the mind in the mind formation? At that time, I did not know the meaning of the mind formation. I thought that the thought was the mind formation. The thought actually is the mind formation, but the story we think about is the designated one. The behavior of the mind thinking is the fabrication and mind formation. However, the story that the mind thinks about is the designated sensing object, which has no matter in mind, so it could not be used for vipassana practice. Then I had intended to think, and the thought arisen was about morning chanting prayer. Buddho Susudo Karuna Mahanavo means the Buddha, the pure one, has the great compassion like the ocean. At the point of Buddho Susudo Karuna Mahanavo, it was the story that had been thought of. I did not see only the story, but also saw the behavior of the mind thinking. The behavior of the mind thinking moved upward and sprang up from the middle of the chest. Therefore, Buddho Susudo was just the designation, but the behavior and movement of the mind thinking was the absolute reality. It was the real mind formation. Once I had seen the mind formation, that means the behavior of the mind thinking, the behavior of thinking ceased and the knower mind arose. I had realized that, I found the mind already. What is the mind? The mind is the nature that knows the sense object, aramana. How can we watch the mind? We depend on mindfulness and samadhi to see the working of the mind. I saw the mind thinking. It was not the story we think, but the behavior of the mind thinking. Once I had seen this, I got the main point. The mind was the nature that knew the sensing object. The mind was within this body, not beyond this body. The mind was the nature that knew the sensing object. How can we watch it? We can know it by having mindfulness. The mindfulness can know it clearly, provided that the mind has sufficient samadhi. Provided that the mind is stable as the knower and the mind is aware of it, we will see the mind working. Sometimes it thinks, sometimes it is ill, sometimes it is happy, sometimes it is suffering, sometimes it is greedy, angry or deluded. We will see its movement and change. Although seeing this, I still could not catch the main point of what Luangpu Dun had taught. I remembered only that Luangpu Dun told me to watch the mind. The mind was the thinker, so I stared at the thinker. It became the samatha. When watching the mind, if we stare at the mind or focus on the mind, it will be samatha. The mind will stay still and be blank. Some disciples, whom I don't want to call as the monk of Luangpu Dun, has kept teaching people to make the mind to stay still, be blank, not to think and not to fabricate. This is not the path that the Buddha taught. Luangpu Dun did not teach this either. Why do I know that Luangpu Dun did not teach to make the mind to stay still and to be blank, to stare at? It is because I had been practicing it for 3 months and then went to see Luangpu Dun for the second time and told him that I have already been able to watch the mind and I have kept on watching it for the whole day. Luangpu Dun told me that it was wrong. I had taught to watch the mind, not to command or control the mind. Go make it right. What you did was wrong. I thought that, how to watch the mind? Sitting down and watching it like this was wrong. He told me that this was focusing on the mind. He did not teach to focus on it and make it stay still and to be blank. Then I thought of watching a movie. When watching a movie, we are not the screenwriters, we are not the directors, we are not the actors, and we are not the critics either. We are just the ones watching the movie. When the movie has a love scene, we watch it. When the movie has an angry scene, we watch it. Whether it is happiness or suffering, we just keep on knowing it. This is called watching. The watching is like watching a movie. Whether how the movie is, we know it as it is. Watching the mind is the same. Whether how the mind is, we know it as it is. The mind has the nature of thinking and fabricate. We shall not modify it not to think or fabricate. At the point where we modify it not to think or fabricate, it actually is the third type of fabrication, called the formation of the imperturbable, anenjali sankara. Practicing the mind not to think or fabricate does not give any benefit. The best would be to go to the Brahma world, subsequently, mostly go to hell, since the mind has accumulated defilements for a long time. Keep on knowing it. We will see the mind working and see the mind changing all the time. How does it change? Why does it change? When the eyes see things, the mind changes. When the ears hear sound, the mind changes. When the nose smells a scent, the mind changes. When the tongue tastes a flavor, the mind changes. When the body comes into contact, the mind changes. When the mind thinks or fabricates things, the mind changes. This mind changes due to the contact, passa. Due to the contact arising, the mind changes. For example, when we see a pretty woman walking past, the peaceful mind becomes lustful. The mind has already changed. At first there is no lust, but now there is the lust arising due to seeing things. When we see a mad dog running past, the mind will work and change. There is the fear of the mad dog arising. At first we were not afraid, but now we are afraid. When watching the mind, we watch it like this. The mind will change when coming into contact. When eating, if the tongue comes into contact with the taste, and the taste is satisfying, the mind will rise with happiness. We do not like this taste, but force ourselves to eat, since there is nothing to eat. For the monks, they cannot choose at all. They must eat what they get. Today, they may come across only the things they dislike. The disliked things are dissatisfying. The mind is displeased, but it's better than having nothing to eat. Some monks do not get any food in the alms bowl. On that day, there is no food coming into contact with their mouth. Nothing to eat is even worse. When we come into contact with this taste, we are satisfied. When we come into contact with that taste, we are dissatisfied. We have to know our own mind. When coming into contact with this taste and the mind is satisfied, we shall know that the mind is satisfied. When coming into contact with that taste and the mind is dissatisfied, we shall know that the mind is dissatisfied. Watching the mind is watching like this. When the body comes into contact, the mind works and changes for us to see. In the very hot weather like this, when the wind blows gently, the mind is joyful, happy and pleased. We will see that the mind is joyful, happy, pleased and satisfied. Watching the mind is watching like this. Do not avoid contact. If avoiding contact, the mind will have no change for us to see. Therefore, when having eyes, see. When having ears, listen. When having a nose, smell the scent. When having a tongue, come into contact with taste. When having a body, come into contact with touch. When having a mind, think. But we must do it with mindfulness and the stability of mind as the knower. Being stable causes the mind to be the knower. And then, when any change arises in the mind, the mindfulness will be aware of and know the change. When the eyes look at the pretty woman and there is lust arising in the mind, the mindfulness knows that the mind is lustful. To know it, the mind must be the knower. It will see that there was no lust a moment ago, but now there is lust. At this point, the wisdom shall arise. It will see that there was no lust a moment ago, but now there is lust. The mind becomes impermanent for us to see. In case of having lust, once the mindfulness knows that the mind is lustful, the lust will cease immediately. The mind was lustful a moment ago, but now the mind is not lustful. The mind is impermanent. Keep on watching it. We will see the mind is non-self. Whether the mind will be happy, suffering, good or evil, we cannot command. When we unintentionally take a look, such as when we turn to see a beautiful flower and the mind likes it, can we command the mind not to like it? Can we command the mind to be neutral every time coming into contact with a sense object? Yes, we can, provided that we concentrate on it. However, if the mind is natural, it will keep changing and we cannot control the change. If we are in the absorption, in jhana, we will be able to control the mind for aeons, with maximum period of 80,000 aeons. There is one kind of Brahma who can live for the period of 80,000 aeons. However, according to nature, we are not able to command the mind. When our eyes see things, what are the components of the eyes seeing things? First ones are the eyes, which are the optic nerves and the tools that support the eyes to see. The next one is the object. Having eyes but no object to see will not make the eyes to see things. The next one is light. If there is no light, the eyes will not see things. The next one is the mind with the attention to take a look. It is called manasikara, which is the mind paying attention and being interested to take a look. Despite having the eyes and keeping the eyes open, if the mind is thinking about something else and is not interested to take a look, the eyes will not see things. In the case we enjoy thinking of something and someone walking past in front of us, we are asked whether we saw anyone coming, and we did not see anyone, despite that there was a person just walking past our nose. We did not see him because the mind had not paid attention to. Therefore, to see things, we need to have the mind. If there is no mind, the eyes cannot see things. When the eyes see things, can we choose whether to see beautiful things or unbeautiful things? No, we cannot choose. Sometimes there are ugly things, but somehow the mind does not see it. In the temple, there is one kind of tree, the bayur tree. The bayur tree has flowers around this size. There is one in front of Panasara. There is a poem of admiration of the bayur tree, saying that the bayur tree has a wonderful smell. Oh, it has a wonderful smell, so it must smell very good. The word here, wonderful, does not mean wonderful, but it means extraordinary. It's a derivative word. The bayur tree has a wonderful smell, so I had found the bayur trees to plant. Then when they had bloomed, they smelled like a broken toilet. Is it extraordinary to have the tree smell like a broken toilet? Yes, it is extraordinary, isn't it? I have kamma. Whenever I walk past it, I smell a broken toilet odor. There is another one behind the nun's dwelling. The nun has no kamma. The nun never gets the bad smell. The nun gets only the good smell and never gets the bad smell, while I feel awful. Do you see that the mind cannot choose whether to get a good smell or a bad smell? The thing that makes the decision whether the mind will get a good smell or a bad smell is kamma. If having a bad kamma result, we will get bad sense object. When seeing things, we see the bad things, hear the bad sound, get the bad smell, taste and touch, or think about the bad story. For the people with merit, when their minds see things, they see only good things, hear only good things, or get good sound, good smell, good taste and good touch. Do you see that actually we cannot choose? The mind cannot choose whether to come into contact with a good or bad sense object. Kamma does the choosing. The mind has no power in itself. This is called the mind is non-self. It has no power in itself. It does not really dominate its own self, and it is under the kamma. Therefore, the mind is impermanent, which keeps on changing all the time according to the contact of the sense objects. The mind keeps moving and changing. We cannot command or control it. Whether it will be happy, or it will be suffering, or it will be good, or it will be evil, we cannot command or cannot control it. Whether it comes into contact with good or bad sense object, it is caused by karma. Whatever karma result we have, it shall cause the effect accordingly. Then, whether it will fabricate goodness or evilness, it is the new karma. The old karma result in the coming into contact with various things, sound, smell, taste, and physical touch. And then the new karma will be fabricated. When coming into contact, if the person without mindfulness sees the beautiful flower, the mind will wander off with enjoyment. Then the lust will arise. When seeing the pretty woman coming, people are crazy to death and mad that this person is an internet idol. But now the internet idol cannot be used as the example, since some persons with very ugly faces could be the internet idol. If in the past it had to be the pretty woman, people were excited to look at them. The mind that has accumulated lust for a long time shall have the lustful latent tendency. It will arouse the lust to arise. We do not intend to be lustful, but the lust arises due to being aroused. Unlike people with mindfulness and wisdom, when seeing the pretty woman coming, they feel pity that how long will the beauty last? They do not realize that they are deluded with their beauty. In actuality, they are not beautiful. It is beautiful at the skin surface only. Where is the beauty? The beauty is only in the hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, and skin. The hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, and skin are the deceivers that conceal the filthy things and ugly things. When seeing people, what do we see? We see only the hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, and skin. That's all. They are deceitful things. When people with mindfulness and wisdom look at them, they sigh. They are pitiful. In actuality, they are not beautiful, so they have to mask the powder. If they are truly beautiful, they do not need to mask the powder to deceive others. Is hair truly beautiful? In actuality, human hair and dog hair are not different. If not showered, they have a foul odor and stench. The person with mindfulness, wisdom, and merit from mental development sees the same thing as others, but his or her mind interprets it differently. It can be interpreted as wholesomeness or can be interpreted as unwholesomeness, depending on the familiarity of mind. If we are accustomed to practice, when seeing the woman, we will feel pity, like, poor her, she shall die soon. How many days left for her beauty? Prior to practicing, I had read the Tipitaka. In the Tipitaka, when the Arahant disciples had seen the women, sometimes they called her Lady Sister. Calling her Lady Sister did not intend to hit on her. They called her Lady Sister. The present language does not call her Lady Sister anymore because it is outdated. Calling her younger sister or older sister is already outdated as well. I do not know what they are called now. It might be called damn you or damn girl, you are so beautiful today. The language has changed. In those days, the monks called the women Lady Sister. I had thought, why did the monk talk so sweetly to the women? When I practiced mental development, I knew that they had called her as the Lady Sister with pure kindness. They did not call her with lust, but calling with kindness and compassion. They felt like brother and sister and felt pitiful that she would die someday. She had thought that she was beautiful. But in actuality, she was not beautiful at all. Sometimes when they had warned her nicely, but she did not listen, they would speak harshly that where was her beauty? Her body was like a leather bag with 9 leak holes. It had 9 big leak holes and countless tiny leak holes, with the loathsome things flowing out perpetually. The Buddha used to tell Makantiya this and said that what was considered beauty He did not want to touch it, not even by the tip of his feet, since it was dirty. The Buddha did not say it with disdain, but with the intention to teach. The Buddha taught Makantiya's father and mother. They listened to the Buddha, understood it, and then got the third stage of holiness, anagama, while she did not. She did not get any benefit, only hatred. Therefore, if we have trained our mind well, when seeing things, the mind will translate it into Dhamma. If our mind is used to anti-Dhamma, it will translate into anti-Dhamma and translate into defilement. Therefore, whether the mind will translate into Dhamma or the mind will translate into anti-Dhamma, we cannot command. The mind will be according to what it is used to or what it has been trained. As practitioners, we must try to train ourselves. When looking, we must take a profound look. When looking at a woman, we do not just look at how beautiful she is, but must look to see the truth. In this era, men are more beautiful than women. Women are more handsome, while men are sweeter and more beautiful. Women look at men with loving kindness and say like, "Hey, little brother," the language must be changed. When we continually watch and practice watching our own mind, we will see that the mind is impermanent, and the mind is non-self. We cannot command it, cannot force it, or cannot control it. When we keep on knowing and watching it for a long period, there will be a light bulb moment that this mind is non-self. It is not our own self and not ours. We cannot control or command it at all. Once seeing this, it is called that we already see the truth. Therefore, we shall look at the body to see the truth of the body, and look at the mind to see the truth of the mind. According to the designated truth, the truth of the body is unbeautiful and dirty. According to the absolute truth, the truth is that this body is impermanent, suffering, and non-self. The truth of the mind is impermanent, suffering, and non-self. The mind is not loathsome. The mind is not like the body. Is it true that the body is loathsome? Yes, it is true, but true according to the designation. Why is it loathsome according to the designation? In actuality, it is an element. This element and that element combined together, it is the element. There is no cleanliness or dirtiness in the element. The element is just the element. But according to the designation, it seems dirty. It is like the poop is dirty. Do you feel that the poop is dirty? Flies like the smell of poop. See? It is the pleasant sense object for the flies, but unpleasant sense object for us. We do not like it. We cannot choose how the mind will be, whether it will be good, evil, happy, or suffering. Our duty is to watch it and keep on reading it until seeing its truth, impermanent, suffering, and non-self. The body is unbeautiful, impermanent, suffering, and non-self. Being unbeautiful is not a real thing, but a designated sense object. The real things are impermanent, suffering, and non-self. We shall keep on knowing and watching it, watching only the loathsomeness and unbeauty. Does not really wash the defilements away, but it can occasionally suppress the defilements. If seeing that this woman is unbeautiful, it will keep searching for other women who are more beautiful. It will keep searching for other sense objects. However, if seeing that all women are impermanent, suffering, and non-self, all the same, it will no longer keep searching. Therefore, by seeing the impermanent, suffering, and non-self, the mind will stop searching. If only watching the loathsomeness, it will not stop searching. When we see the dirty things, we want to get away, right? We want to get away from the dirty things and want to find the good things. Therefore, the designation is the truth in the deluded way, or the designated truth. It cannot really be used for getting rid of the defilements. We need to watch impermanent, suffering, and non-self in order to wash the defilements away. After keeping on watching and watching, it will see the truth, and then it will let go. Due to seeing the truth, it will get bored. Due to getting bored, it will let go of the attachment. Due to letting go of the attachment, it will be liberated. Due to being liberated, it will know that it has already been liberated. There is a suffix at the end of the Tipitaka Tipitaka, saying that at the time of attaining Arahant, the Buddha said that the birth, jati, has ended, the brahmacharya has been over, the work needing to be done has already been done, there is no other work for purity and liberation anymore. This is the suffix. How is the end of birth being watched? The end of birth is not about being born or unborn. The birth is the mind grasping the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body or mind. Therefore, when we do the mental development, reaching the extreme level, we will see the mind letting go of the 5 aggregates and no longer grasp them anymore. Even the mind itself, the mind will no longer grasp the mind anymore. The mind is in the aggregates of consciousness, but the mind does not grasp. Not grasp what? Not grasp the mind. If the mind still grasps the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or grasp the mind, it is called the birth. For all Arahants, their birth have ended. We can easily notice that their minds will not grasp the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or mind. Do their minds work and know the designated things? Yes, they know. When the minds work, they know things, not unknowing or non-thinking. They think, but cleverly, not wandering off. Keep gradually practicing. We will gradually know and gradually see according to the truth. See the body according to the truth and see the mind according to the truth. Due to seeing the truth, it will get bored. Due to getting bored, it will let go of the attachments. Due to letting go of the attachment, it will be liberated. Due to being liberated, it will know that it has already been liberated. The mind has already let go. Let go of what? Let go of the aggregate. The outstanding attachments are the attachment to matter, the attachment to body, and the attachment to beauty of the young men and women. As they grow old, we do not want to get attached. Even if they are given to us for free, we will not take it. Hypothetically, if there is a Miss Universe with the age of 90 given to us for free, will we take her? No, we won't. The beauty is not lasting. What we consider beauty, it is beautiful for the unwise people. When the mind is well trained, it will see the truth. It will not wander and not drift off. Wandering is one thing, and drifting off is another thing. They are collectively called wandering and drifting away. Once wandering, the mind drifts off. When the craving, tanha, arises, it drifts off to the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body or mind. When there is the delusion, moha, arising, the mind will drift off to the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body or mind. And drift off to do what? It drifts off to grasp some sense object, or drifts off to deny some sense object. The mind is just like this. Keep gradually practicing. Then we will gradually know and gradually clarify step by step. The well-trained mind brings happiness, said the Buddha. It never goes wrong. There is no happiness compared to a well-trained mind. Keep on practicing. If there is one thing surpassing the happiness of the well-trained mind, it is Nibbana. Because Nibbana is the absolute happiness. The mind is not Nibbana, but the well-trained mind comes into contact with Nibbana. Keep gradually practicing. It is enough for today. Today is the monk shaving day.